Welcome to the Foster Your Passion podcast, where entrepreneurs, who are mostly women, share their passions, their lessons, and leave you feeling uplifted, motivated, and possibly even inspired to go and foster your own passion. I'm your host, Hayley Foster, and this is the Foster Your Passion podcast. Welcome to the Foster Your Passion podcast. I am Hayley Foster, and I'm excited here today with Dr. Betsy Greenleaf. Betsy is called or touts herself as the Vagina Doctor, which is trademarked. So no one else can call themselves the Vagina Doctor because Betsy has that name coined, and I absolutely love it. So this is going to be an interesting conversation today. I'm recording Betsy for my podcast, and Betsy is recording me for her podcast. So we're going to kill two birds with one stone because that's what busy women do. So, Betsy, do you want to do a little introduction?
So I'm Dr. Betsy Greenleaf, and I'm the host of Some of Your Parts podcast, and I'm excited today to be interviewing Hayley Foster. So this is going to be really exciting because we have so many things that we can talk about that'll help women in both ways.
Absolutely. So one of the things that led me and drew me to you, other than the fact that you call yourself the Vagina Doctor, is that you say, Dr. Betsy No Wetsy. Is that what the term? I love it. So you have like a marketing kick to you as well, which I love, absolutely love. I have sort of like this marketing geek inside of me as well. Like I'm always rhyming things. Like a lot of my tools in my toolkit are like slay your sales pitch and nail your niche and work on your why. So I get the whole marketing side behind it. So Betsy, tell me a little bit about how you got into what you're doing.
So, it's interesting because I was always interested in medicine. And I remember there's a story that I had a friend, we were eating lunch during residency, and she was a podiatrist. And I look across the table at lunch and I'm like, ew, how do you look at people's nasty feet all day long? And she looked up with this shocked look on her face, and she's like looking at me because I was a gynecology resident at the time. And she was like, really? Like, you're seriously asking me that? And I have patients all the time go like, why would you go into gynecology? And, it's really like in medicine and in medical school, you become desensitized to what you're looking at. I just knew that I wanted to help people. And I actually started off my training doing general surgery. And I found that it wasn't that satisfying because and nothing against general surgeons, they're amazing, but if to be a really good general surgeon, you got to be pretty much an unemotional body mechanic. You got to just get in there, fix things, and get out. Like I was the person who was going around when we were rounding on patients and being like, so how do you feel now that your appendix is out? How do you feel now that you don't have, your gallbladder? Like I wanted more of that relationship with the patients. So I was always kind of stuck between the surgical aspect versus gynecology. So I ended up switching into gynecology because I could have that relationship with patients. And it wasn't until my very last rotation in training that I found urogynecology, which most people don't even know what urogynecology is. I remember telling my mom that I was going to do training in urogynecology, and she thought like, oh, is that like a fancy, like European, like Euro Disney? Like, and I said, no, it's like urology having to do with the bladder and gynecology having to do with the pelvic organ. So we kind of address everything. So I found myself doing that. And then excitingly enough, it's a pretty new specialty in the United States. And there's probably about 1,500 urogynecologists across the country. And I'm lucky enough to be the first board certified female urogynecologist. So that's how I ended up in urogynecology.
Awesome.
Though it's interesting, it did take a little bit of a turn, and that's where I am now, where I'm reinventing myself is, after working so many years and working really hard, I was unfortunately in a car accident that ended my career being a surgeon. So that's what I did for many years, for 15 plus years, was pelvic reconstructive surgery for women. And unfortunately, due to a neck injury, I can no longer perform surgery. And it was funny because my doctors were all like, just sit back, be retired, like enjoy yourself. And I'm like, you know what? I am too young to sit back and do nothing. I think I'm like most women, like, there's stuff to do. There's things that need to be taken care of. And more importantly, pelvic health is still a topic that's not openly discussed. I mean, I looked at a study recently, 50% of women are uncomfortable saying the word vagina. And, if we can't say the words, how are we going to get the information out? How are we going to get healing? How are people going to, be able to live their best lives? Because 50 to 80% of women will have a pelvic health condition at some point in their life. So I said, you know what? That's it. I got a lot of more things to do. So I got my hands in a whole bunch of little businesses. You're actually catching me right as I'm coming out of disability and kind of getting on to creating some new things and having a broader reach for women. So,
Oh, well, I'm excited about that, that you're sort of, you're pivoting. And you know what? I mean, listen, you have such an amazing perspective on like, I'm not done. Like maybe the best is yet to come for you, Betsy. Like that's awesome. Like good for you for pivoting and figuring out like how do you stay in this field and still have an impact on women. And something you said really struck a chord with me. So I could say vagina all day long. I can't wait to put vagina all over this podcast post and throw it all over my social media. So I'm super excited about that. Clearly, that's not a problem for me. So if anyone's listening to this right now, just say
that's
vagina
what
three
I said. You know
times.
what? I would love to start a like viral trend, like social media trend, where we just go out and scream the word vagina, like you're in the supermarket and videoing yourself on like Instagram, whatever, say the word vagina. Because I think like the more we say it, you become desensitized, and you're like, all right, whatever, you know. So,
Totally.
that's why go out and
Oh my God. You
say your
should
favorite
totally do that.
pelvic health word, if maybe even if it's not vagina, even if you wanna say the word penis, like, go out and record yourself, put it on social media so that we can, desensitize the world to these words because it's almost like I have this picture where I have a woman's torso and I photoshopped out the whole pelvic area because it's like that area doesn't exist. We ignore it. Like it happens all the time with like orthopedic doctors. Like they'll send me patients for pelvic pain. And I'm like, some of this pelvic pain is coming from back issues or hip issues or orthopedic issues. But even in the medical, like in the medical world, they hear the word vagina and everyone's like, no, 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 it's not me. Hear no evil, see no evil. Say no, it's not me, it's you, it's a gynecologist. I don't know, and there's the body.
Oh my God. So, wait, Betsy, I have such a fun idea. Do you do
You
reels
know
on
what?
your social
I got to
media?
figure out how
You
to
should
do
just
that.
you should just do a reel that's all vagina. Like you should just like keep saying the word vagina and dance around
I
for
have to
30
say the only
seconds.
problem is I am like this close to getting kicked off of Facebook because I've gotten so many warnings on Facebook for using the word vagina because vagina goes against community standards. And they say like if I get like one more violation, they're gonna kick me off of Facebook. So yeah,
Okay,
but
maybe
no, I can do it
TikTok.
on Instagram. Instagram you can say vagina all day long, but yeah, Facebook you're not allowed to say it. So
Okay. All right. Awesome. You should just say we should have like
yes,
World Vagina Day where like everyone has to post the word vagina on their
exactly.
feed.
Exactly.
We're gonna start a whole new
Yeah,
trend.
yeah.
I love it. Oh my God, this is a great conversation so
Yeah,
far.
I
I'm
wanted to
so
ask you
happy.
in return, how
So
did you get into doing what you do?
so I had a business for 12 years before I started this one, and I rode that entrepreneurial roller coaster where I was 30 years old. I had no idea how to really start a business. I had a business partner, and over the course of 12 years, we just figured it out the hard way. We rode the roller coaster. We had up years and down years, and we had successes and we had failures. And one of my favorite things was figuring out how to fix the shit. And so, it's funny. I was just writing a post the other day and I was like, what was the name of that book that I read when I started this business? Basically, like, it was like, those NOLO books. Like, we started our business in 2001. And so we didn't have none of this social media stuff. Like, Facebook was probably like, kind of the only thing, and maybe like some of those check-in apps. And, there was not a lot out there. And so I was using like these books and reading, all about like how to start a business. What are some of the things I need to do? Um, and so I figured it out the hard way. And as I went through that business, um, I got married, I got divorced, I had 2 kids, I got divorced, and I was commuting to the city and I hated what I was doing. At some point, I was just like, I don't want to be in this business anymore. But I felt like I had learned so much, and I wanted to give back what I had learned to other women that were looking to get started or wanted to take their business to the next level. And I'm one of those people that's like, oh my God, what's podcasting? I'll start a podcast. What's social media? I'll put myself out there. Like, I'm just that person where like I jump off the cliff and then I figure it out on the way down. And so I wanted to sort of give back all of the things that I had learned along the way and help women to maybe not go through some of the heartaches and the hassles and, the downs that I had been through, and help them and give them tools and a community to thrive and grow. And so I went to a business coach because when I was leaving my business, I had no idea what I was going to do. It was a marketing and design company and manufacturing. And I started telling him that I was helping women as like a side thing because I was running this networking group and they were coming to me and asking for help. And it was this side hustle that I was doing for free, for fun. And he's like, you're a consultant, so you should go write a business plan. And I was like, oh, okay. So I went and wrote a business plan. And then I went back to these women that had been asking me for help. And I was very connected to the entrepreneurial community in my town. And I was like, hey, I'm going to start a business that's going to help you get to the next level. Are you in? And I got all these women to sign up, and I was giving them all of me at more than they were paying for. But they became my sales force. They became my army of, being on the pickup line for school. And someone would be like, oh my God, I see all the social media you're doing. It looks like your business is amazing. And they'd be like, I hired this consultant, Hayley, who's helping me. And so they became my sales force. And I grew very organically. And actually, for the first time ever, I'm putting out like my first like big launch of like a toolkit for women that are starting businesses or want to get to the next level. So, which is super exciting. It's like the first time I'm offering like a product online that people are going to have to pay for. It's only $47. So it's more like a lead magnet, really, to get people in. And to really for them to get to know me and to see like what kind of value that I can offer. And then obviously the lead magnet turns into the marketing funnel. And so it goes from there. So I'm excited about that. That's been an incredible learning experience. And what I find that I do is like, I learn these lessons and then I give them back. So it's like, oh, do you want to start a lead funnel? Let me tell you how to do it. Let me connect you to my people. So that's just sort of how I roll, and that's what I do. And I love it. I've been doing it for 6.5 years, and I wake up every day excited
And I
to do
think
what
that's
I
so
do.
important because coming from the health standpoint, this is one of the things I talk about all the time with my patients is, they go to the doctor all the time for physical symptoms. And the doctor can only do so much because total wellness is like a three-legged stool. So you have to have the physical, the emotional, and the spiritual all together. So if you're like many women I hear, and I talk to my patients, they're in jobs that they're miserable. They're just, kind of going through the motions. They, just doing the grind, or they're in, or even if they're like, maybe they're not working, maybe they're home and they're just not feeling fulfilled. And so they start to actually have physical symptoms. They start having physical problems. The stress can affect your cortisol, which can affect and lead you to having inflammatory issues, and inflammation can show up in many different areas of the body. I specifically deal with the pelvic issues that we see with more urinary tract infections, vaginal infections, but it can affect the total health. So you're actually, by doing this for women, you're actually helping their overall wellness and their health, because they need to have the fulfillment. And it's scary to sometimes start, a new job, or like to walk away from a job and be like, okay, I'm starting my own business. So yeah, so
Yeah.
there's actually some such great
Yeah.
like lessons to learn from that. So
Yeah. And it's funny you say that, because I was on a consulting call this morning, and I call myself a business consultant because I have no coaching certifications or anything. but coaching like comes along with the territory. So the woman I was consulting this morning turned into a coaching session because I said to her, like, what's getting in your way right now? And she talked about how she's overwhelmed because she's not organized and she doesn't have a routine. So we like shifted gears from like me consulting her on her business to me coaching her through some life stuff and, talking through like she's not getting enough sleep and she's not working out, which leads her to not eating healthy. And that's like my three-legged stool, like you need to work out, you need to sleep, you need to, eat the right amount, eat the right foods. So, and I'm all about that. And so one of the things that my husband and I are totally obsessed with right now is like this whole idea of longevity and doing the things we need to do to live a longer life feeling the way we feel now, right? I want to be like stuck in my feeling and my body of a 48-year-old and live till I'm 100 or 125. And we're trying to figure out like, how do we do that?
I got tons of things for that.
All right, let's go. Because I am currently in search of like a functional medicine doctor that is going to give me practices, outside. Like we talk about this all the time. Like we don't have a healthcare system.
Yes.
We have a sick care system. And I'm sure as a doctor, you like 100% agree
this
with
is why too. I had worked for 15 years in a hospital, and it was just by coincidence that I had this car accident and ended up having this injury and got out, but I was unhappy. I mean, I had administrators, no joke, come up and say to me, see more patients, spend less time. They just wanted the factory. They wanted the in and the out. And it's triage care. Like the American medical system is based on triage. Like, okay, let's just cover things up with some pills and not get down to what's the root cause of the problem, try to fix the root cause, which sometimes we can't fix the root cause, but we can alleviate it. But this like, okay, let me just give you a pill to cover up something. That's the American system. And that's unfortunately what's taught in medical schools. Yeah.
It's so broken. It is so broken. I don't know if you follow him, but I'm obsessed with Peter
That's somebody I have
Diamandis.
to look up. Yeah.
Yes, you have to look him up. He is incredible. He has a podcast with Dan Sullivan, who is like the strategic coach. And they do this podcast together. And Peter he's a futurist. So he talks about like all of this research and all this stuff that they're doing in medical technologies that are not widely accepted because they don't go along with how our medical system is built. They basically like defy it. Like they're trying to figure out ways where they can put something into your body that will target a cancer cell and kill it without you having to do chemo and radiation and all of that. And so it goes against like big pharma who makes all their money on serving us, chemo cocktails. So, what are some of the things that you're super passionate about when it comes to longevity and vaginas? And like, I want to keep my vagina at 48. I mean, I would like it to be like 30, maybe 35, but like, I want to keep it the way it is right now and not have it change, droop, sag, dry up. Like, I don't want to have any of those issues. So hook me up, Betsy. Give me some.
I think
give me some
probably the biggest like biohacking type of thing now is unfortunately, well, there's a couple of things. I think what I'm most passionate about is the vaginal microbiome. So microbiome is just micro meaning small and biome meaning the environment in a certain area. And if you're aware of a lot of things with health and what's been in the news, there's a lot of stuff on gut microbiome because we know that 90% of your happy hormones are made in your gut. And so unfortunately, the traditional American diet is not very supportive of a healthy gut microbiome. We also know that like 85% of our immune system is made in our gut. So this was really important, during all the issues with the pandemic is if you're stressed and your gut's not healthy, you're more likely to get sick. But they also realize that there's this gut brain connection. So because the happy hormones are made in your gut, that make, if your gut is off, then you're having more issues with potentially depression and anxiety. Okay, now shifting that into the vaginal microbiome, is there's a big connection between the gut health and the vagina health too, because everything's connected, and we are what we eat, and if we're eating inflammatory foods, then we have a higher risk of developing pelvic infections, recurrent urinary tract infections, recurrent vaginal infections. They're actually doing research now, which I'm so excited about, looking at a vagina brain axis, the connection between the bacteria in our vagina actually affecting our sex drive. And when this was brought up to me, I go, oh my God, that's brilliant. Why didn't I think of this a long time ago? But if the bacteria in the vagina is off, then evolutionarily, that would not be an ideal time to reproduce. So that would make sense that maybe there'd be this feedback loop that would affect our sex drives. So there's a lot of stuff coming out with being able to test the vaginal microbiome. I've been able to do that in my office for the last 12 years, but there are companies that are now coming out where you can do it at home. And so you can see exactly what's there. But so now fast forward this now to why is the vaginal microbiome, what happens as we get older is with the lack of estrogen. That's one of the hormones that's made by our ovaries. As we go into perimenopause and menopause, that estrogen levels start to decrease. And when those estrogen levels decrease, the lining of the vagina starts to thin out. It starts to dry up. It starts to lose its elasticity. And so we end up having vaginal dryness, pain with intercourse, and now also our risk of vaginal infections and urinary tract infections go through the roof because estrogen basically makes this nice healthy tissue in the vagina. And when that tissue sloughs off as it grows, the healthy bacteria eats it. So now the healthy bacteria loses its food source. So your microbiome like goes out the window. You lose your healthy bacteria, and now you get bad bacteria. Now you get inflammation, and this affects the whole body. So basically, if I hope I didn't confuse everybody, to all right,
No, this is amazing. I'm absorbing every
to
single thing you're
actually have
saying.
a healthy, happy vagina is there's a couple ways to do it. Is that you want to do all the things that you to do to support your health, like eat well, make sure you're drinking fluids, get enough sleep, eat a low inflammatory diet. But that'll help with the microbiome to a certain point with the gut, but then we have to do things for the vagina. And so what's been on the market for years is just estrogen creams. And women just really don't want the slimy creams and things. It's uncomfortable. There's always the question about, well, what happens if it gets on a partner that with a male partner. And so since 2016, we've had some amazing technologies that have come out, and it's like snowballing. Every time I look, there's something new. It started out with the Mona Lisa Touch vaginal laser. And I really love some of these technologies over having to use a hormone cream all the time, because the lasers just use light energy to basically stimulate the tissue to regrow. And lasers have been around since the 1980s. They've been using it cosmetically. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I look back and I go, God, why didn't I think of this? Like somebody's just like, well, hey, if it works on the face, why don't we turn it into a probe and put it in the vagina? So that came out on the market in the United States in 2016. It's been out in Europe forever. And then that just opened the floodgates. And we went from having one product on the market with laser treatments to now there's 10 bazillion companies that have their own lasers that laser the vagina. There's something called radio frequency, which uses use sound waves to generate heat to stimulate the vagina. Then, especially with COVID, they were like, well, hey, people aren't coming out of their houses to get these laser treatments. We got to come up with some home devices. And so, I was looking to see if I have one here.
I almost bought one during the pandemic. I feel like it popped up in my Instagram feed or something, and I was like, "Oh my God, it's like a neurofeedback thing that you put
Yeah,
in your
so
vagina."
then
I
I
forgot.
thought I had it. I just have the box for one of them. This is the box for. I thought I had it. This is the My L. There's also Joylux company makes one called the V Fit, and
Oh, yes,
yeah,
that was it,
that
Joy
uses
Lux.
red light. And we know, once again, back to aesthetics, we know that red light penetrates your tissue and stimulates regeneration. And so my goals are someday to get a red light bed, because that would be awesome to like, because it regenerates all your tissue. But they made it into a vaginal probe that you put it in the vagina and it regenerates your tissue. There's also a company called CO2 Lift, which they use something called carboxytherapy, which uses carbon dioxide in a gel form that you put it in the vagina, and it actually helps to draw oxygen into that tissue for vaginal rejuvenation. So there's so many of these devices, and ideally you combine them all and you get the perfect vagina. Like, so I have like a lot of my patients where we laser them and then we'll have them add like one of these temporary gels to boost the laser even more, or use a home device to keep it healthy. So, because by keeping it healthy, now we help support the food source for the healthy bacteria. And then you got to do all the other healthy things to kind of keep the healthy bacteria in your body, like having the healthy gut and kind of looking, having a healthy lifestyle. And in stress, stay away from stress. That's probably one of the biggest things that'll chase away some of these healthy bacteria. So
All incredible information. I'm like taking copious notes over here. I'm going to have to listen to this again. So, you mentioned earlier that you have a couple of programs coming up, and one of them is called the Happy Vagina Rally or
yeah, so
Summit,
I'm real
right?
excited. So
What is
in
that all about?
December 2021, we'll be releasing the Happy Vagina Rally. It's a 3-day summit with over 30 speakers talking all things pelvic health. It's geared right now more towards perimenopausal and menopausal women, because that's where a lot of the problems for most women will start to show up. And so, yeah, I'm very excited about that. We'll be getting out the information soon on how to sign up for that. And then also in the works is development.
Wait, before you move on, I have a question. So, do you have all the
It's
speakers
all
lined up
done.
for that and
Well, it's
sponsors?
all recorded. It's all, yeah. So still working on spots. Yeah,
Oh,
it'll
is
be
it
virtual.
virtual?
So yeah, so you can do it from the
Gotcha.
comfort of your own home, and then it's all recorded. We will have some live interact every night. We're going to have some live question and answer interactions with some of the speakers, so that you kind of get that more one-on-one type of interaction. We're still working on getting. We're
All right, that is awesome. So, how do people
So
find out
right
about
now,
it?
if you just follow me on Instagram at Dr. Betsy Greenleaf, I will be announcing it there with how to sign up for it. We're still developing some of the things for it in the platform. So, but that's where, yeah, just follow me on Instagram and it will be coming there soon. So yeah, yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. So, and then we're going to talk about, I don't want to talk about me. I just want to talk about you. It's so much more interesting. I have a couple of questions. So, one is, are you a believer in supplements? So, I'm 48. I am not peri yet. At least I don't think I am. I don't have any signs other than like a little bit of brain fog, but that could just be because I'm super busy and I have a million things going on. But like, what's the first step for people to find out? Is it a blood
You
test?
know, so all right, what I usually start out with, well, probably actually my favorite. There's two tests that I love that are my favorite. One is a gut test to look at like what type of bacteria is in your intestines. Do you have leaky gut? Do you have inflammation in the intestines? Because that's probably the easiest one to start with when it comes to making some changes. And there's a couple. Yeah.
So I have a question. So I ordered a
Okay.
Viome kit.
Viome,
Do you
I'm
know
not
Viome?
familiar. I mean, but there's a couple different companies out there. I use GI Map. That's the one I happen to like, but there's a couple different ones that are out there.
Okay, so apparently, for whatever, it said like you can't ship it in New York. So I shipped it to my mom. My mom shipped it to me, and now I can't ship it back because I'm in New York. So I need a friend that's going to go to New Jersey to
I
ship my
know.
shit. And it's like, or I need to drive over the state line to send it back in. But like, Why is New York, like, why
New
can't you
York is
ship?
terrible when it comes to some of these functional tests. They don't allow it, and I don't know why. It's, and I've had that problem where I have a lot of patients, because I'm located in New Jersey, I have a lot of patients that come from New York to see me, and I'm like, okay, we're gonna get this test, and this test, and then it's like, so yeah, unfortunately, a lot of times I have to give them the kits. And then basically we're doing the test in New Jersey and then sending it out from New Jersey, because it's New York State is
Right.
really bad. They won't allow a lot of that functional testing. And that's one of the problems. A lot of the traditional testing just isn't really good. I mean, we can, when it looks at, from looking at hormones, we can get blood levels. I can, you could go to get a prescription, go to a regular lab and get your blood levels checked. But blood is only telling you, for certain hormones, is only telling you what's happening like right then and there, like the moment you had your blood taken. It's not telling you what's going on with the tissue. So there's a lot of different companies that I like where we look at your cortisol levels, we look at the hormone levels, look at how you're processing your hormones. And really that's more so we use either or saliva, or we use urine for that. And I know New York is really, as much as New Jersey gets on my nerves with a lot of things, I'm like, in that respect, I much rather live in New Jersey or come to doctors in New Jersey than have to deal. Yeah, it's, I don't know, New York State
Yeah.
is, I think maybe if you're in New York to,
So weird.
maybe write your politicians and be like, come on, this is ridiculous, because I mean, unfortunately, it has to be on a legislative, level, but to be like, listen, you're lacking proper medical care because they're preventing this, and
Yeah.
I don't really understand why.
I'm gonna put this on the agenda of Giuliani's son who is running for
Yes,
governor. I met him last night at an event, and I'm like, "I'm gonna put
yes,
this on his agenda, women's vaginal health."
exactly, because it's really ridiculous. So
It is, for sure. Okay, so I didn't
no,
sorry to interrupt you, you were on a roll. So you said, getting a gut check is, like, the first place to begin.
hormones, especially your cortisol, because a lot of us, if you're especially busy women, we don't realize what we're doing. Like, so our bodies were meant to be in fight or flight when we're running away from a saber-toothed tiger. So we have these systems that basically, if there's a saber-toothed tiger, this fight or flight kicks in, which is our sympathetic nervous system, and it diverts energy and blood flow away from our reproductive organs, away from our gut, and into like our arms and our legs, so that we have the energy to run away from a saber-toothed tiger. Great. But in modern day, that our brains don't understand the difference between that saber-toothed tiger and I'm under a lot of stress because I have work commitments, like who's getting the kids to soccer, who's doing the like there's so much going on, our brains don't know the difference. So a lot of us are in that fight or flight mode, and we're just sucking all our hormones into, like, it takes away, it actually kind of just sucks away all your sex hormones, so you can actually start seeing problems with your cycles. If you're menstruating, you can see problems with sex drive, and then you can actually even make yourself sick. You can have problems with the gut, your gut health, more inflammation. So we end up really messing with our adrenal glands, which make our cortisol. And that's something we can easily test, but not with a blood test, with either saliva or urine, where we actually see, you want to see a natural curve where your cortisol is very low in the like it's coming up in the morning, that makes you wake up, and then it kind of goes up during the day and you have your energy, and then it's supposed to go down at night, where you end up starting to slow down. But for a lot of women, especially that are under chronic stress, that nice curve gets completely flattened. And so now we may start complaining of more anxiety, more depression, just can't get out of bed. Or sometimes you get your curve reverses, where people are like, oh, I can't get out of bed, I have no energy, but then at night they can't go to sleep because then their cortisol is going up at night.
Mhm.
And so things that we do in our lives, like caffeine to try to give ourselves energy, and then like alcohol at night to get ourselves to go to sleep, actually makes that cortisol response worse. So there's things that we do, that unfortunately we're trying to cope, and we're actually making it worse over time.
Right, those are
Yeah,
the two
and
things
plus,
I do.
forget it.
Other than those two
Yeah,
things,
I
I'm
mean,
pretty
forget
good.
about the idea of what we're doing. Like you're talking about longevity, and that's like a passion of mine too. Is that when we look at oxidative stress. So oxidative stress is basically we know that just living and breathing, even if you sit still, you're going to experience oxidative stress, where there's these little free radicals that bombard your cells all the time, and basically are what cause your cells to age. But there are so many things that we do in our diet, like a high sugar diet, dairy, gluten, these inflammatory foods that will make those oxidative stress worse. Sometimes sun exposure, and some we need some sun, but not too much sun. So there's these free radicals and oxidative stress that builds up in our system. And then what ends up happening is we age and we get disease states. And there's some fascinating products that are out there on the market. There's a great researcher. His name's Joe McCord. He's done pretty much all the research in when it comes to oxidative stress. And he years ago came up with a supplement that he took things that we knew were antioxidants. I mean, we hear about a lot nowadays, like curcumin, and there's a whole bunch of different ones. But he took them and he researched them to see, like, in what ratios were they working ideally, and then he found that in combination they were synergistically, they actually boosted each other. And so he came up with products that you can actually help to reverse your oxidative stress. Unfortunately, the test that he used to measure people's oxidative stress, I've not been able to find for the life of me as a commercially based test. I think it was something that they were doing in the lab, but he was actually able to show that you could reverse your oxidative stress to that of a newborn with taking this combination of supplements. So yeah, it's really, really
Interesting.
fascinating.
Interesting. So that being said, it sounds like you're a
Yes, very
supplement
much so.
fan.
Very much so.
Right. Well, that's a regimen that I am not quite on yet, but I need
Yeah,
to get
yeah.
on. Yeah, so it's funny because I'm actually in search of, as I told you before, I'm in search of a doctor to that believes in what I believe in, and not every gynecologist is going to tell. Like, some doctors are like, "You're meant to age," and my husband and I cannot accept that. He's taking some shots right now. They're not It's not a testosterone shot, but whatever it is meant to boost his production of testosterone, and not so he can like build bigger muscles, but so he can, so he can recover normally from workouts and just feel good and energized and all that good stuff that testosterone does for him. So
That's another
all
whole
of this,
like area of medicine that I'm fascinated with, is like using well, they're looking into using peptides. So peptides, we know we've all heard of proteins. So proteins are made up of amino acids. Those are the little building blocks that make proteins. Well, peptides are bigger than an amino acid, smaller than a protein. And basically, they go and they signal the body to do different things. And so they're discovering that there's a lot of peptides that can be either taken, ingested in a supplement form, or potentially there's a good number of them that actually have to be injected, but that they can actually help to kind of like slow down the aging process. So they're used for many different things. Some of them are actually prescription based. They're starting to like actually make them as prescription drugs, but some of them are available through compounding pharmacies, through doctors. So some of them you can buy actually through legitimate companies that make the oral versions as a supplement. So there's a whole range of things there. And then even they're looking into something called exosomes. Exosomes are another type of like conglomerate of like basically building block natural chemicals to trigger your body to do things. So it's kind of like this ultimate biohacking, and they're like, all right, well, let's trigger the body to heal better. But
you're gonna love Peter Diamandis. I'm gonna send you when we get off of this podcast. I'll send you the link. He does a 3-part series, so he does a longevity retreat every year. He did it like in the middle of the pandemic, and people were like, "Are you sure it's okay?" He's like, "Yeah, we're all going to get tested. We're going to follow the protocols. It's going to be fine." They all went to this retreat. Um, They learned like amazing things. They met with all these scientists and doctors and all these people, but you're going to love it. It's a 3-part podcast series. And I was like, I wish I just sat at my desk and I need to listen to it again because there were so many nuggets in there that I wanted to write down and companies that I want to start following that are all into this space. So there's something here, Betsy, that's like meant to be for us to
I
have this
know, it's so
conversation.
strange how the universe
So I'm
works.
so happy that you reached out. Absolutely. I'm such a believer in that. So as someone that lives in Long Island, like, can I be like, do you do virtual? I mean, with telemedicine now, like, are you doing a lot of
I am,
virtual
but right now
patients?
the virtual this is another thing that drives me crazy, and I'm like, get in front of your legislators because it has to be changed as a law. So the laws on telemedicine are so crazy. Like I'm in the process of trying to get my license in other states because even though my butt is physically sitting in New Jersey, the laws, or at least for New Jersey, are that I can only practice on somebody who is also physically in New Jersey. So that means that either you are coming to my office or if it's a telehealth, that you're physically sitting in New Jersey. So theoretically,
Park my
you could
car on the
drive
side of the
over the
bridge.
bridge and go sit in a Starbucks just to use the Wi-Fi and be sitting in New Jersey, and then I can see you. But that's one of the reasons why I'm in the process of trying to get licensed in other states because, so talk from a business standpoint, and we're talking about how you support women's businesses. I have a website called the Pelvic Floor Store that has pelvic health products. And so I am actually developing that website further. So it's not just going to be products, but that we're also going to be doing education. So the education will be through the Pelvic Floor Store, like some of these courses and summits. I also trying to develop home-based testing so that you, as long as you're not in New York, you can do some of this, vaginal
Right.
microbiome potential testing, send it in, and then be associated with a telehealth service. And then also to have the in-person services. So it will it's in the works. We're not all the way there, but that's what we want to see. And at some point have the pelvic floor store even franchised so that there's pelvic floor stores everywhere where women can go, because especially what I see with women, how many times has it been like 5 o'clock on a Friday when you're like, something down there doesn't feel quite right. I'm a little itchy. Oh, I think I'm getting a bladder infection. And then you can't get in to your doctor and you can't get in anywhere. So that's one of my goals, is really to try to answer that question and provide people with services where they can at least get the relief fast until they can, get in to
Yeah.
a doctor so
Yeah. Or like I'm in
yes.
Mexico and I spent too many days in a hot
Yes,
tub and a pool.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah. Now I just go away
Yeah,
with a
exactly,
fluconazole or whatever
exactly.
it is. Yeah. So this conversation has been amazing. So one of the things that I love to do, obviously, is to support women in business. I love all that you're doing. I want to support you in any way that I can. Maybe we do some
Yeah,
clubhouse
definitely.
rooms.
I have a club. I haven't figured out how to do it though. I started a club on Clubhouse called the Yanni Posse, and we talk about all things
Yeah.
women's health. I cannot figure out how to host a meeting through the club. So, you
Oh,
know
it's
what?
just
I'm
a
wondering, because
button.
I think I have to get my iPad and do it, because I tried to do it on my Android and I can't seem to how to go about inviting people into the club through my phone. So I think I got to sit back down with my iPad and try to figure out how to invite people and actually start hosting the club and just have women just come talk about anything. I mean, it doesn't even have to be necessarily vaginal health. It could be talking about like, hey, I'm stressed because I'm trying to start this business and I'm not getting a lot of support, and anything that is part of our lives. So
Yeah, well, we could host a room under my club, which is Women
yes,
Fostering Women. And then we can invite everyone that comes to that room to your
perfect.
club.
I think that's amazing. I think that would work great.
Excellent. Awesome. Well, what else can I do to support you in all of these endeavors? You also have your pelvic peace program.
Yeah,
Can you talk
so
about that?
basically that's being developed right now. It's going to be a two-tiered type of program. One is going to be like a do it on your own, like virtual course that you go through to kind of figure out how to rebalance your pelvic health and stop urinary tract infections and recurrent vaginal infections and kind of forget about your pelvis so you can get on with your life. That's going to be a do it on your own type of self-guided course. And then we'll have a next tier would be a group program where we actually do it, where we're going to meet weekly. Right now I'm looking at it as a 3-month course. So it's being developed. And so as soon as that's developed, if you follow me on Instagram, you'll see. And in the meantime, I'm putting out tons of stuff on Instagram, a lot of like stuff that's
Yeah, no, I know. I see all your stuff. I see, like, do you have a
you know
Facebook
what?
group?
I have one in that it exists, but I have not advertised it and don't have anybody in it yet. So I do have
Okay.
a Facebook group called I think it's Pelvic Restore. To kind of go off the pelvic
Okay.
floor store. I think it's the pelvic restore, but I actually have to part of the, like I said, part of my, I haven't promoted it too much. I think in a group, I will probably do a lot better than if I'm just posting about vaginas and you can't get a hold of anybody on Facebook to be like, listen, just because the word vagina is out there doesn't mean it's a porn site. It's like, I'm trying to spread health awareness, but I know Facebook has actually gotten really bad when it comes to just anything health. I mean, forget about blocking vaginas; they're blocking everything health related right now. So I know actually a lot of top
So
health
crazy.
experts that are actually even getting off Facebook because of it. So it's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, it is crazy for sure.
And then, actually, in return for
I was
my
just gonna
listeners, what kind of services do you offer?
So I have a membership, which I was going to talk to you about. It's called the Foster Women Membership, and it's a website where you post your personal story about why you started your business, like what your achievements have been, what motivated you. It's really a place for women to connect with other women and see the personal side of their business, as opposed to just reading an about page. And what it also does is it gives you access to other women. So if you are looking for a web designer or a graphic designer, I've sort of vetted everybody that's on that website. It's not really something that's out there to the entire world. Like anyone could just sign up. Like I like to sort of vet people into it because I want to use it as like a referral source. So if you're looking for a headshot photographer, so I have this amazing woman who does headshot photography for women over 40 because it's very different than headshot photography for anyone. And so if you need a headshot photographer and you're over 40 and she's on my website, you know that she's amazing. So it's almost like I've brought all of these badass women together onto fosterwomen.com. And then what I also do is if you are a foster women, you become part of our portal. And in that portal, I've been doing them weekly. I'm not sure if I'm still going to do them weekly, but I do education sessions where I ask foster women to come in and educate other foster women on what they do and how they do it. And so I've had I actually took I did an Instagram coaching class, and then I coached all the foster women on Instagram, like tips and strategies. And then I had the public speaking coach come in. I've had an email marketing person come in. So I bring in the foster women to educate the other foster women. And then I ask them to give a discount to foster women that sign up for their services. So it's really just it's an amazing community. It's been super fun. And so that's one aspect of the business. And then I also do one-on-one consulting for anybody that's just looking to deep dive into like some of the business issues they're having, or if they're doing a launch and they need help. That's something that I do as well. And then I have a 12-week program, which is basically like a 12-week accountability group where we set goals for those 12 weeks and then we hold each other accountable over the course of those 12 weeks. And I do it through we do virtual meetups every week to sort of check in. What was your win? What are you working on? How can we support you? Conversations. And then as part of that, I do one-on-one coaching. So you get 3 hours of one-on-one time. And then we do 3 hours of group coaching. And again, I'll find out like I'll take a pulse of the group and see what everybody needs for their business. And I'll bring in a speaker accordingly. So that's the 12-week program. And those are like the big things I'm working on right now. And then I'm launching this toolkit on next Tuesday, if I can get all the tools finished in time. But over the course of the time I've been building this business, I've been putting all these tools together, and they're now inside a nice toolbox that will have all the different tools. And so that's the big push that I'm doing for
That is
next
awesome.
week.
And I think that's so amazing, especially with, supporting other women in building their businesses. So in my spare time, I also go to school, and I just got my MBA last year, and I'm now doing a dual degree in strategic management, innovation, and entrepreneurship. And so I actually, it should be on my LinkedIn account. I did an article not too long ago about investing in vaginas, and so how unfortunately the business world is very male dominated. So I think this is great that you're supporting women, because I think, the more women can have businesses and kind of develop, I think the better the world is going to be. So,
Yes,
I
I
and
agree
it's not just, I mean,
wholeheartedly.
my focus is femtech, is on pelvic health, which has been really squashed by the investment community in the past. Actually, I was looking recently, it was like something about 2 to 3% of global venture dollars are actually given to female founders of companies, and that's not even female founders having to do with pelvic health stuff. That's just any company that has a female founder. And so we need to change that, change those conversations. And I mean, come on, it's,
Absolutely.
we're not in the 1800s anymore. I mean, like, it's time.
Absolutely. And one of the things that Peter Diamandis was talking about is that our big pharma, doesn't test the majority of drugs on women. What
Yeah.
the I mean, I had no idea. And so, I mean, I have a 12-year-old daughter, and I'm literally vacillating on whether or not I want to put this vaccine in her. And, part of it is, how do they know how this is going to affect these girls? And like, I'm like Jewish neurotic. And so, in my head, like we watched a couple of episodes of, this is so ridiculous, but I'm going to admit it on the podcast. So we watched a couple of episodes of like The Handmaid's
Yeah.
Tale.
I
I don't know if
have
you've seen
not
it.
seen
Have
it.
you
That's
seen
on
it?
my list of ones to watch, though. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't want to ruin it for you, but I'll give you the premise behind it, which is basically all the women in the world become infertile, except for a handful of women that are still able to conceive. And so the government, this new government, that's like the most messed up government, if they have a wife that's infertile, they basically get these women who are basically come out of like this prison camp where they're like mentally messed with, and they become like the surrogate parent, or the surrogate. They're literally just there as a
Yeah.
baby maker. So in my head, I'm thinking, okay, if I don't vaccinate her and she's one of the few women that remain fertile, she's going to become a handmaid. Like, do I want that life for her? Like, maybe she should just be infertile with the rest of the world. So this is my ridiculous like neuroses that goes on in my head. It's hard to think through, like, and I understand why they don't do it. And this is what Peter Diamandis was saying, is that we're so confusing. We're so complicated. I'm sure. And you're shaking your head because you know a lot more than I know. I mean, I'm just taking what someone else has told me, but like, we have all different stages and ages and different hormones and different cycles. And depending on where you are in your cycle and your age and, all of these other things, your chemicals, as you were saying before, can be completely different, depending on like what time of day it is even. So like, how on earth are we supposed to test drugs on women? And I get why they don't do it, but maybe they should find more money, since they are big pharma, to actually figure out a way to test more drugs
I agree,
on
because
women.
you're right. Most drugs are tested on men because women are very complex. Plus, the fact that we can get pregnant, big pharma does not want to test on women, and then all of a sudden we get pregnant, and now this baby has some sort of problem, and then they come after the the company. So it is, but it's, we don't have the same systems as men. We don't have the same hormones, and like it's a lot more complex. And so we do need more research on women's health. And so I think that we're heading that way, but it's just not anywhere close right now. So, but hopefully in the future. And I think, we're seeing more and more companies that are women friendly, and more information coming out, and we just got to keep pushing for it. And then, like I said, supporting other women in business is going to really turn that around too. So
Yeah. Well, and that's what I love to do. And we touched on it earlier. It's all encompassing in terms of what I love to do. Like when I start off with women and we start talking about they want to start a business, they want to make this amount of money, again, it reverts back to like, how much time do you have in the day? Like, how do you handle stress? Like, do you have kids running around? What else are you managing and juggling? And, in my Clubhouse bio, it says, helping women juggle the struggle, because it is a struggle. There's no balance. It's a juggle. And it's like, how good are you at juggling is the question at the end. They were all just a bunch of clowns. So it's like a clown on a roller coaster.
And then I don't want to open a can of worms, but I'm just going to like put this bug in everybody's ear, because this is another conversation we can do another time. So women are very good at multitasking, except for the bedroom is not the time to multitask. This is why a lot of women have problems with sex or sex drive, is because your brain is your largest sex organ, and you like need to only be thinking about one thing when you're trying to have sex, versus like, okay, what's going on at work? Who's taking so and so to soccer practice? What's for dinner? So yeah, that's one
Yeah.
one place that we need to learn to shut off our brains.
Yes. Well, do you have any advice for women on that? I mean, so I'm in a second marriage, so I've had like a whole rejuvenation of sex drive. And I think a lot of women that are, you know, I shouldn't say it's like fortunate, but it was like fortunate for me. Like I thought I was dead sexually, and I'm like a very sexual person. And then I met my husband, and I was like, oh my God, I'm alive again. Like these things work. Like this is amazing. But I feel like, if you're in, like, how do you keep that going? Like, how do you shut out like all the other stuff in order to like get back into that place? And, orgasms are all
Yes.
mental, right? So it's like, and that's something I think you learn later in life. I think super interesting too. That is again like another whole we need like 3-part series to this podcast. My podcasts, by the way, are usually like 30 minutes. We're coming up on an hour. But yeah, so I have any tips
so
for women
what I think
to
is
like,
revolutionary is the research that was done by Rosemary Basson, and I've been trying to get her on my podcast forever. So everyone thinks of the Masters and Johnson's graph of sexuality, where it's like, all right, you have some desire and arousal, and then it kind of goes up, and then it plateaus, and then you have an orgasm, and then it comes down. Listen, Masters and Johnsons did amazing things in their time, but that graph does not describe women at all. If you look up Rosemary Basson, and I think it's I always can't never remember if it's 2 S's or 1 S, BASS, I think it is ON. She did a new model of women's sexuality, and it's all these interconnecting circles. And I think that's if you can understand that model of sexuality, then your life will change, because there's so many women that put pressure on themselves, like I don't have the desire anymore, and it becomes a stressful thing. And now what happens is, for many women, especially as they age and have more responsibilities, the initial like immediate desire kind of goes away. Not that spontaneous desire can't happen, but it's not like the commonplace thing for many women. What is commonplace and can help is if you have the willingness. So willingness is the number one key, and you have to commit to willingness. You have to be like, okay, I'm going to actually try, and you have to have that conversation with your partner, and sometimes you have to even schedule it. You know, you have to, it might not be that, like, you know, we see these things in the movies where people are rolling around in the ocean waves, which I still never understand because I'm always thinking about where's that sand getting into. Um, but you know, people are always expecting it to be
Yes.
like in the movies, like 1 minute you're there, and the next minute you're all over each other. Well, no. Set some time aside, work with your partner, and be like, okay, listen, I'm willing to try. But then you also have to have this agreement that you're willing to stop if it's just not going that way. But for a majority of women, if you're willing to try and you kind of just go through the motions, that's when arousal will kick in, and then because the arousal kicks in, and then the desire to want to go further kicks in, and then you have this great sex, and then when you have a satisfying sexual event, that encourages you to do it more. And when I explain this to a lot of my patients and they go home and they try it, they come back and they're like, you're right. Like, once I actually did those steps, I started going, well, wait, why don't we do this more often? And so, really, it's really unfortunately having to make a conscious effort and really trying to go, just be like, all right, I'm willing to go through the steps. So, yeah.
Right. I love that because I'm always like, how do you accomplish a task? You just
Yes.
get started. So like, how do you have good sex again? You just get started. Like, I love the willingness. You have to
Yeah.
be willing to do it. And then it's like just take the first
Yeah,
step.
yeah, and just, just go through the motions. If it, a lot of times it will move into something else, and if it doesn't, be like, all right, you know what? Let's try it again another time. Like, it's not a race. You don't
Yeah.
have to be like, and certainly don't go through it if you're not interested. That's like the worst possible thing you could ever do. And same thing, like, I don't understand this whole idea of women faking it. Just, just be like, all right, it's not working, or it's not, or communicate, like, you
Right.
know, just because you're just going to
Right.
create this system in your head
Yes.
where you're not going to like it, and then it's going to be stressful every time you got to kind of, you're in that situation. Just, speak your mind and try it, and if it's not working, then hey, do it another time.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
brain check.
yeah. So I know I could talk about all this stuff forever and ever.
I love it. Honestly, this has been my favorite podcast I've ever recorded. Like, we should make this like a
Yeah,
weekly
yeah.
series.
So, well, from my standpoint, where can people find more information about you?
So I am everywhere at Fostering 101. And my LinkedIn is Hayley Foster. Make sure you look at me on a different platform because there's a few Hayley Fosters on LinkedIn, but I think I am the Hayley Foster on LinkedIn. So that's where to find me. And my website is also Fostering 101. And then anyone that wants to become a foster woman, that website is fosterwomen.com.
Awesome. Wonderful. And with me, I got drbetsygreenleaf.com, but more so follow me on social media. Mainly Instagram is probably the best one. I'm on, and it's Dr. Betsy Greenleaf on Instagram. That's probably the most active out of all the accounts, but I am on other things. And then look at, we'll be developing more the pelvicfloorstore.com. So, yes.
Excellent. All right. All those things are going to be in the show notes on my page, and I'm sure on your page as well. So I'm super excited to have had this time with you today. Thank you. I know we booked them back to back, and this worked out perfectly. So this was great. Thank you so much, Betsy. I really appreciate your time and all of your incredible insights. And you dropped so much value today for women. Unbelievable. So I look forward to staying connected, doing some fun things on Clubhouse, getting you into the Foster Women platform, like supporting you in your events coming up. So this has been great.
All right. Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much too. I'm so glad we connected. This is wonderful.
No, this was great. So, all right, I'm going to hit the stop
Okay.
button, but don't go anywhere. All right, everyone. Thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. I'm your host, Hayley Foster, and I hope you'll join me next time for more inspiring women who are fostering their passions each and every day. Please subscribe wherever you download your podcast and follow us on social media at Fostering 101.